Thanks for coming back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Cowboys Fan Show. Now, let's have a look, Scott, around the NFC East. The Eagles, the Redskins, and the Giants, the #1 rivals, I'd say, of the Cowboys, although I feel like everyone's a rival of the Cowboys nowadays. Let's start off with the Philadelphia Eagles. Last year, they finished 7-9. Carson Wentz, a rookie quarterback, started out hot, won their first 3 games, and then couldn't win anything after that, it seemed like.
Yeah, if you're talking about sophomore slumps, I mean, I think this is a guy that's primed to do that. You know, where's the receiving core that he had last year? Gone. Zero rapport that he's got with those guys. He's got Alshon Jeffrey over there now. I'm sorry, who's not an intermediate or slot pass catcher. They're going to expect a lot more out of this guy. They're going to want him to air it out. His #1 target is a downfield target. Like I said, no rapport. The reports coming out of camp right now are the running game is terrible. And they picked up LeGarrette Blount. And they're talking about LeGarrette Blount was on the bubble. Okay? That's insane. You're talking about a guy that's thrived everywhere else he's ever gone. Pittsburgh, I mean, 18 touchdowns last year with New England. And New England backs never, ever pick up a New England back in fantasy ball because of just the way that they play. And this guy killed it. So he's been able to thrive in several different systems, and he can't get it done in Philly. So without a running game up there in Philly and changing it up on their sophomore quarterback, who I do believe is going to hit a slump, I'm not too worried about Philly right now. Their defense, I think, improved a little bit. I really wanted Derek Barnett coming over to us in the first round last year. So they got a decent pass rusher in the draft over there. But overall, I don't think they even finished 7-9.
And, you touched on Alshon Jeffrey, LeGarrette Blount, Derek Barnett. They also added Torrey Smith, who is at former wide receiver. He's sort of been a journeyman over the last few years.
Who?
And he went from the Ravens. I think we saw him in San Fran most recently. So Torrey Smith, another downfield receiver there. So it's going to be kind of hard for Carson Wentz there. And as you said, they added LeGarrette Blount. They lost Ryan Matthews, who Ryan Matthews wasn't exactly the greatest running back, but he was a dependable running back, I would say.
It gave them options. They could do different things in different schemes or whatnot. But you're right. And Torrey Smith, another guy that just can't latch on anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, And with a sophomore quarterback, like all of a sudden he's just going to start building rapport with a sophomore quarterback. It's just not going to happen, Tyler.
Now let's move along to the guys right up there in D.C., the Washington Redskins and their dysfunctional ownership and Dan Snyder.
Right.
Still won't pay Kirk Cousins. So you have your franchise quarterback. You found him, but you don't want to pay the man, so you just keep franchise tagging him and paying him more?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, he's getting paid. I mean, whether or not they want to offer him a long-term contract, and now that guy's making buku bucks up there just to sign those franchise tenders.
Yeah, and the Redskins last year finished up 9-7. They did have a couple of key additions this year. Terrell Pryor coming over. He is a good playmaker. But I think the losses outweigh the additions here in losing Deshaun Jackson as well as Pierre Garçon.
I would actually disagree. I have a lot of faith in Terrell Pryor, to be honest with you. I targeted him in fantasy, but I just wasn't able to pick him up. We're talking about a guy who did well in Cleveland. You know what I'm saying? So he was able to transition from quarterback to receiver and did well in Cleveland. And they had that quarterback carousel going around, and he was like the one bright spot on the team. I think that Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback that he's ever worked with. Yeah. And I think the guy's going to have a monster year. But you're right. There's nobody else there. I mean, no Deshaun Jackson. I'm sorry. Nobody to stretch the field. So, I mean, he's gonna be taking a lot of coverage. And same thing. Running back. Who's the starting running back over there? Didn't they lost Jones? I think
they lost Jones. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what's really going on with that offense, and they're paying Cousins so much money that I mean they can't really afford to pay anybody else right now. And there just aren't a lot of role players. I think Terrell Pryor was an excellent pickup for those guys, but I just don't think that there's anybody else.
Yeah, and they did also add DJ Swearinger, the hard-hitting safety. Used to play with the Texans. We'll see how much, if any, impact that he has now. Moving along to the G-Men, the New York Giants. They finished up 11-5 last year. They were second in the division. They added Brandon Marshall coming over from the Jets, as well as DJ Fluker on the offensive line. But they lost Jonathan Hankins on the defensive line. Overall, not a whole lot of change there with the Giants. Paul Perkins elevated to the #1 running back after letting Rashard Jennings go. What do you see for the New York Giants this year?
I think it's a pretty similar team that they had last year. I mean, there was the same thing with preseason and just training camp reports is that Brandon Marshall's not really a good fit for their system, but he's a possession receiver. I think he's going to help them move the chains. He's a little banged up right now. OBJ is dealing with an ankle right now. So I do think that they're the biggest threat in the division. I think that defense, no matter any losses, is still phenomenal. Yeah. They're gonna be able to stop the run, which is why I'm really hoping Zeke plays week 1 against these guys. I kind of want to bang them up and just get them tattered a little bit. The receivers. Being banged up right now, I think that we got to go at them hard in week 1 and try and take that one and just try and keep these guys banged up. But Eli Manning, I mean, he's a fairly reliable quarterback. I mean, he is who he is. Like I said, Brandon Marshall's a possession receiver. OBJ is going to be OBJ. So there's not a lot of regression there. We got to play hard against these guys in week 1. I do think it's going to come down to the wire between either us or the G-men.
Yeah, and OBJ listed as questionable for that Sunday Night Football showdown. Now, speaking of which, we're going to dive right back into that as we come back from this commercial break. As Scott's going to be giving us his keys to the game. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Cowboys Fan Show.
Let's go Cowboys!